Hare Krishna to the devotees in ISKCON Brisbane. I hope that you can hear me and I hope that you can see me. Uh, Thank you very much for having myself, Devakinandan Das. Um, Thank you for having given me this opportunity to come on board and say a few words on a beautiful topic from Srimad Bhagavatam. Special thanks to Janardhan Prabhu, who has very kindly arranged this opportunity to spend some time reading, studying, and sharing Srimad Bhagavatam. I know we live in an uncertain time at this moment, but the beauty of it is we don't have to travel anywhere, and yet we can stay connected. And Krishna consciousness is really about Yukta Vairagya, which means that we use anything and everything that we can, which appears to be part of this material world, but if we use it for Krishna, then it actually becomes a very powerful tool for us to utilize in the service of Krishna consciousness. So today what happens now is I have a nice verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, and the title of today's topic actually is Lose the Battle but Win the War, or Losing the Battle but Winning the War. Very often in this material world, we see so many things from the viewpoint of have we won something or have we lost something? And sometimes it can be very difficult because we are so conditioned in this world to think that victory means something and defeat means something. And it is very natural in this world that when one feels defeated, we actually feel morose and we feel very discouraged. And it's not a good feeling to live with. But it's also very important for us to realize that when we feel victorious in this world, in any endeavor that we do, it's very often a great feeling. And we feel very confident. We feel that things are going very well. So victory and defeat is something that we will have to face from the day we are born into this world. And it is something that we will have to face until the day we leave this world. But how we actually, how we view victory and defeat from a spiritual angle is very important. And victory and defeat is not just as simple as winning a race or getting a contract. In fact, very often, even in material relationships, there is what we call victory and defeat. Victory and defeat are also very closely connected to qualities like pride, false ego, and on the opposite side, as humility, tolerance. And very often, in Srimad Bhagavatam, victory is defined very differently as compared to victory in this material world. A very nice episode to understand victory and defeat in Srimad Bhagavatam is from the episode of Vritrasur and Indra. And that happens in the 6th canto, and it spans a few chapters, almost from the 9th chapter, moving on to the 12th chapter. And there is one verse, a very nice verse that I want to share with you that actually frames this idea of victory and defeat. So the verse is actually from the 6th canto, 12th chapter, and the verse is text 7. So it's 6, 7, 12. Let me read it first, and then after that we can try and spend a few minutes discussing this wonderful pastime and trying to understand what Bhagavatam has given us to make us understand what defeat and what victory really is to a devotee. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Paying obeisances to all the Vaishnavas now. Let's chant. Let me chant this verse. Yuyut Satam Kutrachit Atatayinam Jaya Sadaikatra Navai Paradmanam Vinaykamutpatti Layastitishwaram Sarvagnyamadyam Purusham Sanatanam. The translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Vritrasur continued, O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious, but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. He is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, and he knows everything. Being dependent and being obliged to accept material bodies, belligerent subordinates are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. Please hear the purport. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hriddhi sannivishto, mattaha smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. When two parties fight, the fighting actually goes on under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's Paramatma, the Supersoul. Elsewhere in the Gita 3:27, the Lord says, Pragate kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. The living entities work only under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The Lord gives orders to material nature, and she arranges facilities for the living entities. The living entities are not independent, although they foolishly think themselves the doers, karta. Victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As for the subordinate living entities, they fight under the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Victory or defeat is not actually theirs. It is an arrangement by the Lord through the agency of material nature. Pride in victory or moroseness in defeat is useless. Let me read it again. Pride in victory or moroseness in defeat is useless. One should fully depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is responsible for the victory and defeat of all living entities. The Lord advises, Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jayo hi karmanaha. Perform your prescribed duties, for action is better than inaction. The living entity is ordered to act according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Supreme Lord. Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kalachana. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. One must act sincerely according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Lord. Last paragraph. Vritasur encouraged Indra, saying, Don't be morose because of my victory. There is no need to stop fighting. Instead, you should go on with your duty. When Krishna desires, you will certainly be victorious. This verse is very instructive for sincere workers in the Krishna consciousness movement. We should not be jubilant in victory or morose in defeat. We should make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we should not be concerned with victory and defeat. Our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. So this is the verse that we spent a few minutes trying to meditate on. And you realize one thing. This verse is in the middle of an amazing setting. And this setting is actually about a great demon known as Vritrasur and the heavenly kingdom king, Indra. Indra was always at the forefront of trying to defeat the demigods, the Asuras. And together with the Devatas, he tried very hard to actually defeat them. Sometimes they won, sometimes they did not. And you will find that in life, this is what happens to all of us too. But at some point, Indra became puffed up. And Bhagavatam says, because of pride, he sat down one day in Swargaloka. And at that time, Brihaspati, his spiritual master, came into the assembly. But Indra was so enamored by the dancers and the fact that he was victorious that he did not stand up in front of Brihaspati. And when Brihaspati left, he left feeling that now that Indra does not know the value of the blessings of the spiritual master, he must suffer the consequences of material nature. This was the first defeat that Indra witnessed here. And even though he is a devata and a demigod, Bhagavatam shows us that no matter what position we are in, victory and defeat really depends on our consciousness. Indra may have defeated the asuras, but his pride defeated him. And when his pride defeated him, he could not stand up to greet Brihaspati because he forgot that it was Brihaspati's piety and Brihaspati's purity that actually saved the devatas all the time over the asuras. So sometimes when we look at victory and defeat, we forget that while we may conquer something or appear to have something in our hands and we feel victorious about it, if we are consumed by pride at that point and we think that all credit goes to us and it is not coming from the mercy of the Lord and the devotees or even the arrangement of the Lord, then actually we are defeated even while appearing to be victorious. Because a devotee to be consumed by pride, false ego, and envy is actually a downfall in devotional service. So when Indra lost Brihaspati, the devatas lost the wars. And Indra decided that he needed to get someone else to help him. And under guidance of Brahma, he went to find a saintly Brahmana known as Vishwarupa. Unfortunately or fortunately, as Krishna would arrange it, Vishwarupa, while being loyal to the devatas, he was also loyal to the asuras, because from his mother's side, he had a distant relation to them. And so whenever he performed his sacrifices, Bhagavatam tells us that he would give a lot of merit naturally to the devatas, but then he would also neutralize the devatas' strength, such that when they both fought, it would be a draw. If you have seen football matches, you know it's sometimes 0-0, 1-1, 2-all, 3-all. They were strong, but they couldn't defeat each other. So Indra began to have suspicions. And as he thought about it, he understood that maybe something is wrong here. One day, as he was seated next to Vishwarupa in the sacrifice, Bhagavatam tells us that after Vishwarupa finished all his prayers, he stopped. And as Indra was leaving, Indra heard Vishwarupa very in a soft tone. He was speaking very softly, but the mantras were actually for the benefit of the asuras. Immediately he became very upset. And Indra, without thinking, in great anger, because victory over the asuras was so important to him, because dominion over Swargaloka was so important to him, he just chopped off the head of Vishwarupa with a single stroke of his sword. And in that sense, Indra was again defeated, this time defeated by anger. And if he had just tolerated and understood that in this world, victory and defeat, as this beautiful Prabhupada's purport said, actually is arranged by Krishna, then Indra would have been more devotional and more surrendered in his attitude. Sometimes these great personalities take on such roles in Bhagavatam, but we should not disrespect them, because they are showing this for the benefit of us living entities. Because if all the personalities in Bhagavatam were perfect, then how would we be able to ever learn amidst all our imperfections? So this is the greatness of Bhagavatam. So then Indra decided that now that Vishwarupa is gone, he feared very greatly, because he realized that he was a Brahmana and there was no reason for him to be killed actually. He could have been rebuked, he could have been scolded, he could have been banished. But now news of Vishwarupa's dying reached his father Twasta. And the sage Twasta was the father, and he then decided that Indra should be punished. Through his great austerities, he summoned a powerful demon. And this demon came out from the southern side, Bhagavatam tells us, of the pyre, of the sacrificial pyre. And Bhagavatam says when Vritrasu started appearing, he was a fearsome personality. His body grew and grew and grew, and his arms and the size of his body reached out in all four directions. And his body was the color of molten copper. His eyes were also very, very copperish. And Bhagavatam said he looked like a burnt hill, blackish hue, and yet reddish in color. He was lustrous, and he looked like a bright array of the clouds. Wonderful description. He had a huge beard and mustache, and his eyes were very fierce. And Bhagavatam said when he stood upright, actually the crown of his head pierced through the clouds. Vritra in Sanskrit means one who covers everything. And actually, it is a very apt description for this great personality. When Vritrasur grew and grew and grew, Twasta then decided that he must unleash him against the Devatas. When Indra and the Devatas started realizing that actually the demons were coming back to fight, they had no idea at that point that Vritrasur was actually there. No idea. So when the demons started coming out and they were on the battlefield, Indra and the Devas charged with their army. And then they saw Vritrasur. And Bhagavatam said they were, at that moment when they saw Vritrasur, some of the Devatas actually lost heart. They became a bit morose. Sometimes even before we are defeated, mentally and emotionally we can become defeated. And the Devatas felt that way. They were struck, Bhagavatam said, with wonder and disappointment. And because of that, they lost their strength. And Vritrasur was so powerful that even though they started shooting bows and arrows at him, Bhagavatam said it was like garlands of flowers being thrown at you. You don't feel anything when garlands are thrown at you. They are very soft. And the same way, the bows and arrows, they felt nothing actually to Vritrasur. And that's when the Devatas lost, because they lost hope. And they all left, and they started praying very hard to the Supreme Lord Krishna. And in one of the great prayers of the Devatas there, which is important for us to understand the principle of victory and defeat, they say something very instructive. It is actually found in the 6th canto, 9th chapter, 25th verse. 6, 9, 25. So the Devatas sing, Ya Eka Isho Nijamaya Yanaha Sasarjayena Anusjama Vishwam Vayam Nayasyapi Puraha Samihitaha Pashyamalingam Prita Ishamaninaha. And the translation that Prabhupada gives is very nice. Prabhupada translates, the Supreme Personality of Godhead who created us. In other words, the Devatas are singing. The Supreme Personality of Godhead who created us by his external potency and by whose mercy we expand the creation of the universe is always situated before us as the Super Soul. But we cannot see his form. We are unable to see him because all of us think that we are separate and independent gods. In Sanskrit, it is known as Pashyama Lingam Pritak. Pritak means to be separate. Isha means controllers. Maninaha means we are thinking. So the Devatas are telling Krishna and admitting to Krishna something very important. And Prabhupada captures it in the first line of his purport. Prabhupada says, here is an explanation of why the conditioned soul cannot see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. The Lord appears before us. However, we are always deriding him as not being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So actually, defeat for a devotee is when a devotee loses the consciousness or is not aware or is not determined and doesn't have the faith that Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. Krishna is everything. Krishna is whole and soul for all of us. And Krishna is the universal soul of this universe, as Kunti Mata says. So the Devatas actually, by saying that prayer, they were alluding to the fact that they also understood why they were in a precarious situation. They understood that even though the Devatas were always devotees of the Lord, Swargaloka, where they resided, was sometimes such a distraction materially that it was very easy for them to forget that all that they were getting was the mercy of the Lord. There was their defeat. And when one is defeated by thinking that one can lord over material nature, then the effect is, as the Devatas say, Pashyama Lingam Pritak Ishamaninaha. We begin to think that we are separate and we are independent. So victory and defeat for a devotee is defined in terms of whether we are aligned to the interest of the Lord or whether we resist the interest of the Lord. You will find that when we are aligned with the interests of the Lord, then our minds are not agitated. It is a practical manifestation, a test that you and I can do to know whether we are aligned in the interests of the Lord. In 1.5.14 of Srimad Bhagavatam, that point is stated by Narada Muni. Because Narada Muni makes it very clear that unless one is aligned in the interests of Krishna, what happens to the mind is it becomes dushtita matihi. Dushtita matihi means it swings like a pendulum, and we're always disturbed, always anxious. And you'll find here that the Devatas were anxious when they saw Vritrasur, and they ran to Krishna. But at least they ran to Krishna. Sometimes when we are anxious and we are in trouble, our instinct may be that we try to solve it by our own. But we forget that at the end of the day, victory or defeat in whatever we endeavor is dependent on Krishna, as the purport says. So Krishna then advised them very nicely. After hearing the beautiful prayers of the Devatas, Krishna then advised them. And Krishna said, you cannot defeat Vritrasur because he's very, very powerful. But there's only one way to defeat him. You must go and see this great sage known as the Dichi, and you must ask him for his bones. The Devatas realize if we ask the sage for his bones, that means the sage must give up his body. And Krishna said that the Dichi is a great, great soul, and tell him why you want his bones, and he will give it to you. And from that bones, ask Vishwakarma to carve out a powerful weapon, and only that weapon will be able to kill and vanquish Vritrasur. So Indra and the Devatas go and see the Dichi. And when they see the Dichi, they tell him very straightforwardly that the Lord has asked you to sacrifice your body for a higher cause. If I were the Dichi, I would say, I don't think so, I want to do that. I would rather keep this body because I'm using it as a tool for Krishna consciousness anyway. But then the Dichi says something really nice. When you have time, look up his prayers. It is in the 6th canto, 6th canto, I think it's in the 11th chapter. 6th canto, 10th or 11th chapter, and there are 4 or 5 verses starting from verse 8. In those verses, the Dichi tells us also how he views victory and defeat. And he says very nicely this point. If one is unhappy to see the distress of other living beings and happy to see their happiness, his religious principles are appreciated as imperishable by exalted persons who are considered pious and benevolent. What a nice point. This is the victory of a devotee. A devotee does not feel any happiness to see someone in distress. And it's very true, isn't it? A Vaishnava is paradukha dukhi. And when Dadichi saw the difficulty of the Devatas, he felt that why should I keep my body for my happiness? I must give it for a higher sacrifice, especially if it is Krishna who wants it. Now, for a materialist, giving up the body is defeat. But for a spiritualist or a devotee, giving up this very sharir for a higher cause is victory, especially when that cause is aligned with the blessings of the Lord. And then the Dichi says, this body, my dear Devatas, they will be eventually eaten by jackals and dogs after death. It actually doesn't do any good to me, this spirit soul. So let me use it now for something good, because it will live for a short time and then it may perish any moment. And when the body goes, the possessions go, the riches, the relatives, they're all going. Better to engage all of this for the benefit of others. Otherwise, these very same things we are holding on to will become sources of tribulation and misery. What a beautiful point. And so he said that, and then he concentrated on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and he gave up the body. And Bhagavatam tells us that he cut off all material bonds, and his soul merged at the lotus feet of Krishna. In this episode itself, again we understand victory and defeat from Dadichi. Dadichi appeared to give up something which we all value, but because he had a higher realization that this body will go anyway, the only question now is how we use it. And when an opportunity came for him to use it for the Lord's service, he used it. And that is the victory of a devotee. Not all of us will be called to give up our bodies for the Lord, but while we are living, we should give up the tendencies that stop us from using this body, this mind, and this intelligence for the Lord. We can give up those tendencies, like pride, mental speculation. All these things we should learn to give up, because by giving this up, then defeat doesn't touch us, and the victory of remembering the Lord is assured. So this is a very important point. And so what happened? The Dichi then gave his body up. The Devatas then took these very powerful bones. And they remembered what Krishna told them just before they left. And Krishna said something very nice. Krishna told the Devatas, when Vritrasur is killed by my spiritual strength. See the point. In the Bhagavatam, Krishna, after telling the Devatas, you will kill him with that thunderbolt, in the next point, he says very clearly, when Vritrasur is killed by my spiritual strength. In other words, there is no one who can kill Vritrasur until it is ordained by Krishna. And no one can defeat or be victorious in any endeavor until Krishna ordains it. This is a very important point. And then he says, when Vritrasur is killed by my spiritual strength, then you will regain your strength. Then you will regain your weapons. Then you will regain your wealth. Then there will be good fortune unto you. And then he says something wonderful. This Vritrasur can destroy all the three worlds if he can. But do not fear, my dear Devatas, that he will harm you. Don't fear. Why? He is also a devotee, and he will never be envious of you. If you want to know, this verse is found in the 6th canto, 9th chapter, 55th verse. What a beautiful point Krishna states. Krishna says so nicely that actually Vritrasur is a devotee. So Krishna knew who Vritrasur was, even though the Devatas had no idea. When we are very caught up to hold on to something, it is very hard for us to recognize devotion in others. It's very hard for us to recognize devotional qualities in others, because our hearts can be filled with false pride and this need to hold on and to lord it over material nature. So Krishna was reminding the Devatas, you are not the only devotees, but Vritrasur is a great devotee. And because he's a great devotee, he may fight you, but he's not envious of you. This was the true victory of Vritrasur over Indra. Even though at the end of this chapter, Indra will win the battle, at least on the battlefield. The war in terms of the larger battle, the battle of the mind, the battle of whether we can keep Krishna in heart, that battle will be won by Vritrasur. And that is very important. And Prabhupada writes in the purport very nicely, if a devotee engages in devotional service, and after giving up his body, he engages in the same service in the spiritual world, there is no difference. That is why for Vritrasur, there would be no difference for him whether he is killed by Indra or whether he defeats Indra. All he wanted was to be engaged in devotional service and to do what the Lord would wish. And then he had full faith that even when he left this body, he would continue his devotional service. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, a devotional service of such a devotee is never hindered. And that is true victory. So Bhagavatam says, now the scene is set for the great battle. And at the end of Satya Yuga and the beginning of Treta Yuga, two great armies of Devatas and Asuras, together with Vritrasur and Indra, they met on the banks of Narmada. This Narmada is not the Narmada river that you see today in Gujarat. Prabhupada says this occasion of Vritrasur and Indra probably happened around 120 million years ago. That's how old the history is. But that's the beauty of Bhagavatam. When Vritrasur came, he was so powerful. And now Indra became a bit more powerful too. Because if you remember, he had the assurance of Krishna. He had the guarantee of the thunderbolt. But when Vritrasur saw Indra and the Devatas, he let loud a roar and he just attacked them. And when he started attacking them, he was so powerful. But when his other armies of small demons saw that Indra was very powerful and the demons, the Devatas were attacking, they began to fear and they ran. The Devatas attacked these demons from behind, which is against dharmic principles. And Vritasur then rebuked the Devatas. He said, "What is the benefit of killing such weak enemies from behind? If you are truly not ambitious for sense gratification, stand before me and fight." What a statement to make. He challenged all the Devatas. If you are truly not ambitious for sense gratification, then stand before me and fight. Meaning, perform your duty and fight me and face me. And then Vritasur roared. And Bhagavatam says the roar of Vritasur was so powerful that the Devatas fainted. Can you imagine that? If anyone roars and you faint, he must be quite a personality. But when he fell, what happened was when all the Devatas fell, Vritasur took up his trident and he charged at them. He even trampled on the Devatas because he was so big. Indra decided, it is time for me to act. Indra had a mace, a club, and he threw it at Vritasur. When he threw it at Vritasur, Vritasur caught it like someone would catch a small stick or a flower garland. And when he caught it, he just threw it back at Indra's elephant on whom Indra was seated. The elephant was Airavata. And when the elephant got hit, the wound was so bad and the impact was so bad on the elephant that Bhagavatam said Airavata fell back 14 yards. You do the math. 14 yards is very far back for a huge elephant. And Indra fell with him also. And when Indra saw that Vritasur was so powerful, he became morose. Vritasur did not attack Indra at that point because he had fallen. And like a true noble soul and devotee, he refrained from striking Indra. Indra then recovered, and Indra touched Airavata with his hand. And because he had nectar within him, both the elephant and Indra stood up. But Indra looked morose and he stood very silently because it appeared that he had been defeated. Vritasur then tells Indra, "O Indra, you are a killer of an innocent person, my brother Vishwarupa. I should kill you on the battlefield for your heinous sin. But if I kill you, I would take great pleasure in doing so because it is my duty on the battlefield. But if my fortune is that you should kill me, then even then I will be victorious, because then I will concentrate on the Lord's lotus feet and make that my destination. And when you kill me, I will receive the dust of the holy feet of all the great devotees, which is what I actually seek." So then he said, "Throw your thunderbolt at me. It doesn't matter." And he said, "Why do you feel morose? Do you not realize that actually your victory has been guaranteed by Krishna? The Supreme Lord has favored you. He has given you assurance because he has given you a weapon that can slay me. So do not feel morose, Indra. Pick up your thunderbolt and fight me." And at that point of time, that's the verse that we are talking about today. Because at that point of time, Vritasur then preaches to Indra that no one is guaranteed of victory, my dear friend. Not you, not me. We are like pawns in a big game, a game of dice. And who wins, who loses, who knows? It is only Krishna who can decide what will happen. And in that way, Vritasur, that sworn enemy of Indra, actually encouraged Indra on the strength of Bhagavatam's principles. Do you know why he did that? Because in Vritasur's eyes, the victory or defeat on the battlefield was not important. It was part of his duty, and he would perform it to the best that he could. But ultimately, Savai Pumsam Parodharma, there is a higher duty that was calling Vritasur, and that is Yathor Bhaktir Adok Saje. To render devotional service to the Lord is true victory in spiritual life. It is true victory in even material existence. And how must this devotional service be rendered? Vritasur showed us the way. It must be rendered ahaituki apratihata. In other words, Vritasur did not fight Indra with a motive to win Swargaloka. No. He did it as a form of his prescribed duty as a demon born to slay Indra. It was his job scope. But Indra was fighting for Swargaloka. And he was fighting because Swargaloka represented the heights of material sense gratification. And therefore, Vritasur tried to explain to Indra that the real devotional service, the real victory in our life, is when we perform devotional service without a tinge of material motive. When Nadichi gave up his life, he did it without any material motive. He saw it as a higher cause for Krishna. And in the same way, Bhagavatam also tells us that Vritasur had the same feeling. So it's very important. And in doing so, he earned the respect of Indra. He earned the respect of Indra. And when Indra heard the great teachings and preachings of Vritasur on the battlefield, what did he do? He said, Vritasur, today I am glorified on account of my friendship with you. Here were two enemies, so to speak, but they spoke as friends, as rivals, but respectful of each other. And in true principles of fighting, Vritasur then said, pick up your thunderbolt and now fight me. And it was a great fight. And Bhagavatam says Indra was so powerful that he used his mace and later his thunderbolt to chop off two arms. He chopped off two arms, both arms of Vritasur. But Vritasur did not give up. Even at that point of time, he roared and made his mouth so big that he tried to swallow Indra. And just before he could swallow Indra, he hit Indra so hard that Indra's thunderbolt actually flew away. And again, Vritasur, like a true noble warrior, stopped, preached to Indra that again victory and defeat is not in your hands nor in my hands. And then he told him, pick up your thunderbolt. Look at me. I have lost two of my arms. I even know that I'm going to be defeated on this battlefield. But I do not have a defeatist attitude. Why? Because he saw victory as really the victory of our consciousness. And so Indra said, it is a pleasure to fight with a warrior like you. And Indra then fought a fierce battle with Vritasur. And Bhagavatam tells us Vritasur opened his mouth wide and he tried to swallow Indra. And Indra went inside. And when he went inside, he used his thunderbolt to find his way out by breaking through the abdomen of Vritasur. Vritasur was now on the ground. And Bhagavatam tells us it looked as if now he could not win. But was he morose? Did he feel defeated? No. Because Vritasur was now very conscious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He had done his best, but the victory was in his consciousness. And therefore he sings some very beautiful prayers in remembrance of Krishna. Aham hareta vapadayika mula dasanudaso bhavitasmi bhuya manasmareta supate gunamste grahitava karma karotu kaya nanaka prishtam nachaparameshtam na sarvabhaumam narasadhipatyam na yoga siddhi apunarbhavam va samanjasadva virahaya kamshe ajata paksha iva mataram kaga stanyam yatavat chatara shudartaha priyam priyeva vyusitam vishanna manoravindakshadrideksha tvam. These prayers tell us what was victory for Vritasur. Because in the first prayer, Aham Hare Tava Padaikamula, Vritasur is praying at the point of his leaving this world. And what is his prayer? He says, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants, who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental pastimes. May my words always glorify those pastimes. And may my body always engage in loving service to your Lordship. And then he goes on to say, my dear Lord, you are the source of opportunities, Samanjas. I do not want to be ruler or proprietor of the higher planets, the middle planets, the lower planets. This is very clear that Vritrasur's fight in this war was not for Swargaloka. It was actually to render devotional service in the form of his prescribed duty. It was to please Krishna, Hari Toshanam. And he says, I don't even want siddhis. I don't even want liberation. All I want, my Lord, is that I want always to be at your lotus feet. And then he gives beautiful examples in Bhagavatam. He says, just like, baby birds, they wait for their mother to come back and feed them. Just like he says, a calf waits very anxiously so that it can be connected to its mother to get its milk. Just like a Moro's wife waits for a husband who has traveled for a long time, and she waits for him to come back to satisfy her. In the same way, he says, I'm always yearning for an opportunity to render service to you. In these prayers that I chanted, 2 times he uses the word opportunity. Because opportunity is coming from Krishna. Krishna is known as Samanjasa, and that means source of opportunity. So a devotee sees the world as a source of opportunity to render devotional service to Krishna. He sees the apparent reversals of life as an opportunity to dig in, increase the quality time that he should spend with Krishna, and thereby he's not defeated. You're all a good example. The management and the leaders of ISKCON Brisbane are a good example. You have worked very hard to create a community where everyone can come together despite such adversities and uncertain times. But you have created an opportunity through Facebook for us to be able to hear, discuss, and share Bhagavatam. So there is no defeat. Even though our bodies may succumb to something, even though the challenges of the world are there, but at the end of the day, body has to go. Mind has to go. Intelligence has to go. But devotional service remains. And so Indra then sat on top Vritrasur. Even as Vritrasur remembered these beautiful verses and fixed his mind on Krishna. And Indra used his thunderbolt to sever the head of Vritrasur. And Bhagavatam tells us it took him 1 year to get that thunderbolt to sever the head of Vritrasur. But by then Vritrasur was long gone. You spend 1 year trying to kill your enemy, but your enemy's consciousness has already been placed at the lotus feet of Krishna. And after that, when Indra thought he could enjoy Swargaloka, he was chased by sin personified in the form of a very ugly personality who smelled like bad fish and was chasing him wherever he went. So after all the efforts of getting what he thought was victory, Indra spent thousands of what we would call human years. And in celestial years, many, many years he spent living in the stalk of a lotus flower on the lake of Manasarovar. Why? Because he was running away from sin personified. Because he had actually killed and slayed a great devotee of the Lord and one who was following Vaishnava and Brahmanical principles. And all the devatas in Swargaloka had to come and they had to give him the obeisances that were due to him. And it took him many years before he could come back to Swargaloka. And thus ends this beautiful pastime of the Lord and his devotees. So we see from this pastime a few things that are very important. First, Vritrasur's whole consciousness was that he was Nimitta Matra Bhavya Sabyasachi. He was actually always aligned with the interests of the Lord. And therefore he became a fitting instrument. Through him, Indra learned devotional principles. But more importantly, through him, we are now learning devotional principles. Another point that's very important is that Krishna never ever forgets even a little bit of devotional service done by a devotee. Swa alpam, even a little bit, Bhagavad Gita tells us, is always taken to the next life. In the past life, Vritrasur was Chitraketu Maharaj. And even though he was cursed because out of a little bit of pride, he criticized Lord Shiva, and Parvati Mata, by Krishna's arrangement, cursed him to become an asura in his next life. Krishna assured that his consciousness would be anything but an asura. So that tells us the power of execution of devotional service is true victory, because we never lose anything. But if I am a lawyer by training today, tomorrow when I die, I can't take that LLB certificate with me. And when I'm born, wherever I am in the world, I'll just come out as another baby. My certificate doesn't come out with me saying that, hey, past life I was a lawyer. No. But whatever bhakti you did, that comes with you. It is a stock that Krishna allows you to give. So both Indra and Vritasur appeared on the battlefield. They appeared to be fighting, but one consciousness was victorious and the other thought it was victorious, but ultimately it was defeated. And the final point that's really nice to remember is actually real defeat in this material world is when we are defeated by our pride, is when we are defeated by our hankering, and when we are defeated by a great need to possess things when actually everything belongs to Krishna. So we may try in this world. Sometimes Krishna gives us what we call victory. Sometimes he allows us to be defeated. But even in defeat or victory from a material point of view, if we are trying to remember Krishna, if we are trying to serve the devotees, if we can even imbibe 1% of this mood of Vritrasur, then there is no victory and there is no defeat in this material world. There is only victory in the spiritual world. Thank you very much for your time. Hare Krishna. Okay, I was told that I may be able to see if there's any questions. If you have any questions, any violent objections, you can always send it across. I'll try and see if there's anything here. Is there any past story of Vritrasur? It's very interesting. I just mentioned to you briefly that Vritrasur was Chitraketu Maharaj. And Chitraketu Maharaj was a powerful king. He didn't have children, and he wanted children very badly. But it was not in his destiny to have it. But Angira decided to come across, and Angira Muni blessed him with a child. But the child died because of the envy of the other queens. And Chitraketu Maharaj fell into despondency. But Narada Muni and Angira Rishi came, and they preached to him Krishna consciousness and the impermanence of the soul. They did that in an amazing way. Narada Muni said to the child who was dead, he summoned the soul to come back into the child. And when the child woke up, Narada said, my dear child, look, your father Chitraketu is here. And the child said something amazing. He said, which father? In which life? And that's when Chitraketu's heart came to realization that real victory in this world is also the victory of understanding who we are in actuality. So that's very important. So I hope that background is useful. Let me go up and see if there's any other. Okay, there's nothing else here, I think. Thank you for being encouraging, Prabhus, Matajis. I took wonderful darshan of your deities just now on the Facebook page. I want to thank Janardhan Prabhu, Viraj Prabhu for kindly allowing me to speak. And I wish you all the best in Krishna consciousness. And if there's anything I can do to be of service, please let me know. I will end the lecture now. It's 4:50, and Krishna willing, see you sometime again. All glories to Vritrasur. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Srila Gurudev. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki. ISKCON Brisbane Yatra ki. Hare Krishna.